welcome everybody. It's good to see all of you here for the Crawford County Historical and Genealogical Society monthly meeting. That's a mouthful. We want to share with you, so first of all, some upcoming events. And next month, on July the 8th, we are going to talk about the Messamore mystery. Any of you ever heard about the Messamore mystery? Good. Well, Karen Schwartz, who's president of the Historical Society in Harrison County, is going to give a presentation, and we've seen it. Oh my goodness, I don't know how much time she spent studying the Messamore case. From the time he was a little boy, what happened here in Crawford County, takes it on to him escaping jail 2 or 3 times, locking up the Harrison County Sheriff in the jail down in downtown Crawford and escaping, on to Alcatraz, and later in life when he ends up living in Louisville after he's out of prison, and some later conversations he had with a sheriff here in Crawford County. So it's a really interesting and fun presentation. So I would advise come early, invite your friends. It's going to be a good presentation. July the 8th. There's some flyers here for that. Then in August, we have a world-famous author by the name of Roger Moon. Oh, he's there. He's there. Roger has been, we got to know each other because Roger's come down to help with Doc Prep and for the preparation for these things for digitizing. And I didn't know that he was an author, but he's this wonderful book, Visions of Home, is about letters to home from soldiers in World War II. And Roger also wrote another book that I read about when Time Magazine, it was Time Magazine, right? Life Magazine came to Paoli to do a whole article about Paoli, sort of representative of small towns in the country. And that was fun too, because we see names and people that even I remember. And so anyhow, Roger's going to be here to present on this book in August, the second Tuesday in August. So Roger, thanks for doing that for us. Appreciate it. And he's also donated a book here, which Roberta has in the section on wars. Yeah, so you'll be able to see that too. Now, okay, that's up there. Well, we have a presentation tonight to share with you about digitizing and the old records of the county that are here in the archive. Now, when most people talk about this building, they talk about the annex, and it is the annex. But behind those old doors those are from the old courthouse, right? The safe, yes. Robert, yeah, from the old courthouse. Behind those old substantial doors are old Crawford County records, and that's called the archive back there. My wife Sherry, sitting back there, and I have seen all sorts of places in that counties in Indiana have stored their old records. We have found them in basements of courthouses, and those are spooky, and in attics of jails where you have to literally crawl in to get to where the records are. We even found one county that stores their records underground in an old limestone mine. Well, Crawford County, none of the above. You can actually get to the records here, and they're easy to get to and use. So we're going to share with you a little bit about those records and what's back here and why you might be interested in them. Now, I got to tell you, I think family history is completely awesome for a lot of reasons. But, you know, when you talk about family history, we all want to know where we came from. We all want to know our roots. And there's these 2 quotes by people from a study that I'd like to share with you because it just makes common sense. This first one says, individuals who had the healthiest identity development also had high levels of family history knowledge. Knowing where we come from expands our sense of who we are. Kids just want to know stories about the family. They want to know about grandpa, great-grandpa, and old great-great-grandpa William that served in the Civil War. They want to know those things. And it connects them to their roots. Here's another quote, or excuse me, I should say, old records are priceless. Old records are priceless to people that are trying to develop their family tree and connect to those previous generations. As a matter of fact, this is a picture of me back in the archive area, and this is a picture of my grandson who came to help us one day, and I want to tell you, he had a blast. He's a teenage boy. Is he interested in old records? Well, as it turns out, he was, particularly when he's found out or he heard stories that told him about how he was connected to some of those names in those old books. And it makes sense, doesn't it? We just want to know how we're connected. But I've got to ask you, do you have a weird family? I've got a weird family. Sherry married a weird guy with a weird family. And the fact of the matter is, we all have weird families. So embrace it, love it, have fun with it. I mean, when you look at the stories that you'll find in your family tree, you'll find heroes and horse thieves. You'll find people that dealt with difficult situations well and not so well. You'll find all that stuff. And you know, that's life, isn't it? That's life, so embrace it. And even for the situations that weren't so stellar examples, we learn from it. But one of the things I will say is that, I mean, there's a lot of kids today that have trouble understanding where do they fit in this world? What do they have value or not? And even if their current family seems awfully dysfunctional to them, if they go back and learn about their great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, I guarantee you they'll find examples of people that they're just tremendously proud of and happy to be descended from. It's their family. So there's a lot of good that comes from this. By the way, I used to listen to a genealogy podcast, and at the end of the podcast, he would say, now remember, as far as anybody knows, we're just a nice, normal family. But we all know how weird we really are. Now, you know, this archive here is really a treasure trove. The records go back to 1818. Do you know why they go back to 1818? What's that?
It became a state.
No, became a county. Yeah, it became a county 2 years after the state was formed in 1816. So the books back here, and you will see some books, go back 1818. That's over 200 years ago. Some of the examples of records back here: marriage, wills, probates, guardianship. There's property and land and mortgage records, gas and oil leases. You don't think of gas and oil being a big thing in Crawford County, but it was. There's a lot of leases, and it shows you where a lot of people live. I found out where my great-grandparents lived because of one of these records. Veterans records, court records, and a lot of other records. So there's all sorts type. And we'll take a minute after this first part is done to just take a little tour in there and see the types of records that we have there. Now, I have learned, and Roberta, thanks to Roberta, and Sherry and I had this, we retired and we had this little idea, well, we just can't sit around the house, so let's go and see if we can help out in Crawford County some way. We lived outside of Georgetown, but we came, and Roberta had put us right to work. Thank you, Roberta. But here's some pictures. Wow, they're sort of hard to see, aren't they? We have all sorts of records. Look at this one. You can hardly see it, but it's in pretty poor shape. And if you were 200 years old, you might be too, right? And here's a picture of the all the bookcases and collections of records. Although this is historic now because that bunch of books were on pallets. And since this picture was taken, Roberta has worked with the county and got a whole new set of bookcases in there, so we've got no books on pallets anymore. We've got a lot of records that are in these metal sleeves. Matter of fact, there's one there. And I'll talk to you more about this. We even found a record. Well, there's Roger right there. A record, remember finding this? It's almost like a scroll. Look how long that record is. It was literally that long. Unbelievable. So it's fun delving into the old records for all sorts of reasons. Now, what we're working on right now is the idea of make the records accessible so people can get to them. And you know, these old records are really treasures, but they're worthless. They're worthless unless you can get to them and use them. And that's what we're working on. And we're working on digitizing those old records so that they'll be available online. And secondly, so those old records won't have to be handled so much to preserve them and protect them as well. So we can get into the Family Search Project. Now, Sherry and I both have these Family Search tags on because we volunteer at the Historical Society, but then after we did that, we got involved with Family Search, and we volunteered to work with FamilySearch.org for 2 years as well. And that's why we're here working on this digitizing project as well. FamilySearch.org's motto is, we inspire people everywhere to connect with their family across the generations. And FamilySearch.org provides online tools, applications for your phones, access to the records for individuals, digitizing services like what's going on here right now, and it's all free of charge, absolutely free. You can sign up right now or later after you go home, FamilySearch.org, just sign in, set up your own account, it's free, and it's got a world of records in there. It's fully funded by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, that's why it's free. And we, to May, last month, the digitizers working here had gotten over 185,000 pages of records digitized. That's huge. They're almost halfway done, so there's a lot more to go. But that's a lot of records. Now, you preserve these records by digitizing too. They're never going to get lost because those electronic records they are kept in secure facilities, multiple copies, upgraded all the time to make sure that they're always going to be around in digital form. So, you know, let's hope we never have a fire or especially a flood up here. But, you know, if something happened to these records, the ones that are digitized, they're not going to be lost. And the access to them, online free. They're not online yet, but they will be in the coming months. So soon, these things will be available. And I also want to thank all the doc prep volunteers that have helped us because, well, I'll tell you why. See this metal bin here with all those envelopes in it? When you go in there, you'll see that there are just walls full of these things. And we've tackled a lot of these, Elizabeth, right? Tackled a lot of these envelopes here. Now, let me tell you, if it's a book, the book's in there, not a problem to digitize. The person doing the digitizing gets the book and page by page takes a picture of each one. But they can't very well do these easily. So the reason we need volunteers is that a volunteer takes this record out, and this is a circuit court record from 1890s, I guess, and you have to take the records out and literally carefully unfold them, try to get the creases out as best possible, take the fasteners out and lay them flat, label a folder with the file number, the names, and the year, and put them in there so that the digitizer, when they get ready to digitize these, they just have to open it up and take a picture of each page. So the work of the volunteers has been great here and really appreciated. And although we have digitized all the records that Family Search is going to digitize at this point, because Family Search is concentrated on the old records, Crawford County would actually like to get all of these records that are in these metal cabinets unfolded and into files. So we're working to get all of those done for the county. Now, and we continue to do this every Monday and Tuesday from Monday and Tuesday from 10 to 2. So all of you are welcome. I see many of you who do already, but all of you are welcome to come and participate if you like. It's simple. We have a lot of fun together, and there's interesting discoveries every hour of every day. Right, Annette? Yeah? We found some.
I think the camaraderie, the table conversations are nice. There's somebody, it's like you learn from the different areas too. Like if there's somebody from the English area or somebody from the Patoka area, somebody from the Leavenworth area. I mean, you kind of are free down here, different areas of the county. I think that's nice.
And then not only the camaraderie, but people can do goofy things like I just called you Annette, Emily. Sorry.
That's okay.
But we've celebrated birthdays and we've found out all sorts of things from each other about the county that have been really amazing. Now, how to have fun as a history detective. Okay, so in recent years, Sherry and I have been working on our family trees. And Sherry has a great-great-grandmother and great-great-grandfather that lived in Fredonia, Indiana. And we knew their names, we knew their dates. We didn't know much more about them. But, oh, hey, before I talk to that, I want to tell you, Emily, it's the fun part. I want to tell you a little bit about the fun part. See this? I took a picture of these. This was in one of the old probate records. And these little memo slips of paper. I think Crawford County has always been frugal. And we have found more little scraps and pieces of paper with things scribbled on them than I would have ever believed. But these became part of official probate records. But the fun part was looking on what was on the back part. Yeah, a lot of you have already heard this before, but I got to share this. For all you guys, next Mother's Day, this is the thing you should get for your wife. It's a poem. It says, your wife. If your wife is weak and ailing and has trouble with her liver, and you want to make her happy, what's the best thing you can give her? You might give her a nice new bonnet, but her profit will be much greater if you give her a bottle or two of Simmons Liver Regulator. And that's just like a little snapshot or a little glimpse into what was life like back in the 1880s and 1890s here in Crawford County. When, it didn't have so much medical care, but there were remedies being advertised like crazy. And at my age now, Simmons Liver Regulator sounds pretty interesting, Oh, and the other thing, we have collected a history of how do you connect pieces of paper together in the most unusual and odd ways. These are some of the fasteners that we have found papers connected with. A lot of straight pins, which I don't understand because as I try to push a straight pin in, it hurts my thumb. We have found a lot of these flathead, whatever you call them, where you put it through the hole and spread out to the other side. We found things that I thought this was new stuff. I remember using these at work and thinking, wow, that's a great new idea. But they were around for a long time. These, and I didn't know there was such a thing as the round ones. Now these are really cool. If you want to start a business, do these, because if you put this on a piece of paper, it actually looks like a Valentine on one side of the paper. Cool effect. And we've got, these little brass clips sort of go on the edge and connect papers together. But if you look closely at it, it's like it has a little smiley face on it. So, yeah, Forrest Gump didn't invent the smiley face. And, these. There are some other fasteners in there that we would love to see the machine that they use to put those fasteners in.
Doesn't it make you wonder when the stapler was invented?
It does. Same way with typewriter, because you don't see typewritten until much, much later. And we'll pass this around. You can take a look at some of these old fasteners. We did learn one other thing too. Rubber bands. Oh, cringe. Do you know how crunchy rubber bands get after 100 years? Literally, crunchy. Falling apart.
I call them dead earthworms.
What's that?
I call them dead earthworms.
Dead earthworms. That's what they look
Like when
like.
you go fishing and
Dried
they dry
out,
up.
dried out earthworms. Okay, well, finding family treasures. We're getting close to the end here. So, what you want to do is figure out who are my past family members and where did they live? And then you get into the fun stuff like what were they like? Because it's not so hard usually to find a name and some dates and locations, but they're like second and third great grandparents. I want to know what were they like as people. So how do you know what were they like? Well, that's where you can start piecing together their story. And I'm going to give you an example. The example is the one I was just getting ready to go on a few minutes ago. We knew that Jane Alexander was born in Ireland and she immigrated to the United States. We know that she married Wilhelm Lammering, who was born in Germany and immigrated to the United States. Now, what else do we know here? Well, one day we were going through old probate files like these here, and I looked at the front of the sheet, Jane Lammering, and I said, is that Sherry's second great grandma? And it was. And so I thought, well, what kind of treasures are we going to find in here? Well, I'm going to tell you what those treasures are in a moment, but first I'll tell you that when we started looking at the dates and when she came from Ireland, did you know she was 15 years old when the Great Potato Famine in Ireland started? 1 million people on that island died because of starvation, and twice that many immigrated to other places trying to stay alive. So she was a teenage girl when this desperate, they call it the Great Hunger over there. So we know it was a desperate situation for her and her family. We know that we don't know why Wilhelm Lammering came over, but he immigrated from Germany. But we do know this, that Wilhelm and Jane meet someplace along this immigration path because they got married in Hamilton County, Ohio. You know what city's in Hamilton County, Ohio?
Cincinnati.
Cincinnati. So that's about where they get married at that point, and they go down the river and settle in Fredonia, Indiana. Okay, well, that's nice to know those things, but what else can we learn? When we found this record, all of a sudden, we find this is a probate record, so it's a record of all her belongings and what happened to them. And Sherry was looking at this list. This is a list of the sale. They had a sale of all of her things. And it talks about, for instance, 2 quilts sold for $1.50 to Eva E. Jones. Eva was her daughter. And go through this, and there's a shuck tick. You know what a shuck tick is? A mattress. I think
it's made out of shucks, right?
What's that?
It's like a feather bed, but it's made out of shucks.
I think that's what it is. A big bag of corn shucks that you'd sleep on, right? How would you like to go home tonight and sleep on a shuck tick? It's sold for 10 cents, by the way. And let's see, there's a lot of things. There's curtains, there's pillows, there is page 2. There were a lot of things. There were cups and plates and dishes. There were carpets, and there's even wood in the wood house, and some tools, and a looking glass, mirrors, all sorts of stuff. But you know what that told us? For a young girl, as a teenage girl, that was worried about starving to death, she ends up finding a good husband in the most unusual place, the United States of America, I guess, is where they must have met. They settle in the most unlikely place, Fredonia, Indiana. And from this listing of what they had in their household, they had a lot of stuff. They had everything a family could want or need. They had a little farm. They had all the food that they could need to eat, which was a big thing, having grown up in a time when you were worried you would starve. I guess something that none of us can quite appreciate, but she did. And Wilhelm probably understood that too. He went by William when he was here. It helped us understand a little bit about her life, and we were happy for her that her life developed into a really good life, and they had a great family. But we'd still like to be able to travel back in a time machine so we could have dinner at the Lammering house and listen to the accents, because you would have heard German accent, Irish accent, and who knows what else was there. That's the sort of thing that just makes family history and looking into the old records like this, make them come to life, for me anyhow. So that's an example. Now, I want to invite you to come back to the archive area here, and we're going to show you some samples of these old documents and records we've got back here. A couple of, and by the way, I want to thank Roberta, is our county historian, and thank her and the county for letting us come back here and look at these things. It's open every Monday and Tuesday, right? And you're welcome to come and browse these old records. But we're going to go and show you a few. The 2 rules are, number 1, a lot of these are really old records. So really, really be gentle and careful with the old records. And secondly, nothing leaves that room. You'll be in deep trouble if you take anything out of there. I know you won't, but that's one thing we're always concerned about, is to make sure they're kept in there. So with that, let's go back here and take a look. Now, Now, if you gather around here first, we'll first show you how the digitizing works. This sort of feels like home, Roberta.
Yeah.
Now, just gather around. I'll tell you, I'm not actually going to turn on this equipment, but we'll tell you how this works. So, we've got a couple of ladies that come and do the digitizing work for Family Search. And this is the Family Search equipment that's used to digitize in situations like this for old county records, for instance. And what you'll see here is a flat black surface here. And these are two really powerful lights. And up overhead here, that's just a really high definition camera. So, for the doc prep volunteers, we would have got them into these folders, so the person doing digitizing can just open up that folder, and on the label you see a case number, the names of the people involved, and the year. And so on the computer they would put in that information for this set of images, the case number, the names, and the year, so that electronically you can easily find that particular set of records. And then once they've got that ready to go, they would take a piece of paper, set it right there, and this, believe it or not, it just looks like a box, but it's a switch. And they would hit that, and that takes a picture. They'd move that, next image, and just one after another. Now, when they finish that set of records, that's all finished, and they go on to the next one. And they've got that. Now, what if they're dealing with one of these old books? Whoops. I should wear a hard hat, but thank goodness Crawfords have hard heads. So for the books, this is a book where the record actually goes all the way across this page and the other page too. So they've got to be sure and take an image of that entire two-page set as one image. And so they'll position it here, make sure it's right, and then take a picture, turn the page, take a picture. And then they check all of their work after they're finished for the day to make sure all the images are right. They may have some things that didn't come out so well or that they have to re-image. And then all of those records are stored on the computers. There's a hard drive attached to the computer, and every few days, they're doing a lot of records, so every few days they'll actually take that hard drive and ship it to Utah, where people at Family Search there will also review the records for quality, make sure they're correct and accurate, and the images are good. If there's anything that's a problem, they'll ask them to redo certain records. And then they get put into the storage system so that when a large set of these records are completed, and I think in the coming weeks actually we'll have a big set of records that go online and become accessible at FamilySearch.org. So that is how Family Search does the digitizing work. You've all heard of microfilm, right? Well, that's what everybody used to use in the 80s and 90s, microfilm. Don't use that anymore. It's all digital. Now, and all those old microfilm records have been converted to digital, so it's all available digital. The next step is getting indexes so that if, for instance, we did scan that entire book, it would be really nice to be able to have an index for that book that says if I'm looking for William Crawford, somebody in my family, it'll tell me what page William Crawford's on. Wouldn't that be cool? Right now, the way we do that, oh, it's painful. It's painful. You go through that book page by page and list. On page 1 is this thing, this thing, this thing. Page 2, this. It's a whole manual effort. But guess what? In this world of high technology and AI, there's now starting to use computers and AI to actually, from the digital images, generate the index. And then there's some spot checking to check the quality, but indexes are going to become really available really quickly in the next 5 years. Not today, but really soon. So things are changing. And someday, if there is some kind of other digital media besides microfilm or now digital, something replaces this digital media or storage media, they'll convert it to that too, so that they're always kept up to date on the technology that's best to save these old records. So that's digitizing. Any questions about this process? What's that? They have those records kept in large data centers, like most any business have big storage facilities full of big servers full of storage disks. So they've got them stored out there. And I also think they keep them in more than one location, because you always want to try to make sure you have your backups in more than one spot. So they do all that stuff for free. Now I do want to show you some examples of the records. As you look around, you'll see there's a lot of different kind of records. This middle cabinet here with those binders, well, Roberta, would you like to tell us about what's in there? Because you've done a lot of that.
It's information that I've gathered up about all the soldiers that I so far down. I mean, I don't have everybody. I don't have every soldier of Crawford County, but I do have a very, very lot of them there. And it starts from the Revolutionary War on down to, I have somebody from the last Korean and Vietnam, and we have a few later on, but not very many. That's kind of hard to come by that information, but the younger wars. But there's probably 2 or 3 big binders up there just for the Revolutionary War. And you think, well, we wasn't even a state then when the Revolutionary War was. But those men had a connection to Crawford County. They either got married here, or lived, well, they didn't go to marry here, but they lived here or they're buried here.
There are a lot. Those are great collections, and if you've got a family member in a war, I'd highly recommend it.
And I got quite a bit of information on the War of 1812 soldiers and the Civil War. I have a lot on the Civil War. And I've been working on World War I, but I'm at a halt right now because I've got a lot of things going on in the family. But I need to get back on that World War I because I'm wanting to put together a book on the World War I soldiers. Doris Slicer did a great book on the Civil War soldiers. And I was going to do of Crawford County. She did it for Crawford County because she was a Crawford County resident at that one time. And but I wanted to work on the World War I, and then maybe later on somebody could take over and do for the World War II and all the rest of them, But
That's a good segue into, Roberta Toby has a vision of many things that can be done here.
yes.
Many things. But one person can't do it all.
And it would blow your mind to see how many men from this county have put their life on the line. It's unreal. I mean, it's unreal. And they said there's an article in the New York Times, but I can't find it. But I've been told there's an article in there that says for Crawford County's side, it sent more men to the Civil War than any other state or any other county in the United States.
I believe it. We're going to look at the Civil War records, and there was a ton of Civil War veterans from here. Now, this paper here, one day I just sat down and wrote the different things that Roberta told me that we need volunteers to do. There is all sorts of things on this list that are fun and interesting. So if you ever, or you know anybody that is interested in volunteering, there's a whole lot of fun things that they can do here. So we got a list. Now let me show you some of these old books. This is one that is really precious, and I'm going to ask you not to open it or leaf through it, but I'll give you an example. It's an Estray book, and this book is one of the books in here, one of the few books that was actually in the first courthouse in Crawford County. Quiz question, where was the first courthouse in Crawford County?
We don't know.
Hmm?
You don't?
No. No.
That's true.
Mount Sterling. Absolutely right, Bob. Mount Sterling, it was a log cabin. And there's nothing there today. But this book was in the first and all the rest of the houses. It's an estray book. Now that's a word that I have no idea. What's an estray book? Any of you know? Well, if you were in the county back when it was a new county in 1818, and you were a farmer and you had some livestock, not so many people had fences, so how are you going to keep track of your livestock? Well, you would go to the courthouse and you would say, for instance, let's see, taken up by Thomas Davidson of Crawford County, Ohio Township, and the date here, and he starts describing each of his cattle, for instance. There's a blaze on her forehead, 2 hind feet that are white, and it goes near the shoulders, there's a color, there's a marking, and on and on. Hey, that sounds sort of quaint to us, but that was a big deal. Couldn't afford to lose your cattle, and this was the way they could keep track of each other's cattle. And by the way, that's a genuine leather binding there. So that book, there's a lot of history. If only that book could talk. Now, Yep, you'll be able to see it all. And by the way, that writing in there wasn't done with an ink pen, done with a quill and ink. That's just what they used. What are some of the other types of records? Okay, well here's a will record that starts November 1818. But look at that binding. Well, that wasn't done in 1818, right? Some of the old books that were really falling apart, like this one starting to, they had been rebound years ago, and this is how they would rebind them. So the book inside is the original book. And so once again, you see the handwriting with ink and quill and wills. This is Jacob Crecelius of Crawford County, being of sound mind and sound body, bequeaths his personal property and tells who it's going to go to. And often they'll list children or wife. And that becomes really great information. And sometimes it'll tell where they lived or their farm or who gets what. And if you can find a will record for one of your old family members, this is really interesting to learn about them.
John, can I say something?
Yeah.
There was it also lists children, but sometimes if you can't find a will, if you go to a probate record, you can find where it will list the children. There was a lady one who came in here and she wanted to get in the PAR, but she couldn't prove that the man had a daughter with a certain name. And I went and looked in the probate record, and she said, I've been looking for years and I can't find this. I said, did you look in probate? She said, no, I looked in the will. I looked in the probate and it listed the man and said she was his daughter.
And
She
so
got in. She got
mystery
in.
solved. And that was a probate record that I was telling you about Jane Lamry. Did you have a question?
No, I was just going to say that was my first husband's
Oh, really? And you know, that Crecelius was spelled with a Z in
See,
there.
already that's the way it is in the cemetery.
Not really. I see, that's why I think those are great. Oh, well now this book right here is Miscellaneous Records. That's a big book. Right, Edward? Big book. Now, you could try to leaf, well, a lot of these books do have this index in the front, which is very helpful. So you can find it alphabetically in front. So that's good.
Sometimes they're in the back.
And sometimes in the back. But look at this. There is an index. Somebody, by hand, painstakingly, went through this book, page by page, and put together a list of all the names alphabetically. So this makes it easy to
I
find.
think that was Larry Burmeister. He did a bunch of the indexes.
Did he?
you find.
Larry did a lot of good work. So this is an example of an index, and we still need to get some of these done. So it'd be great if you volunteered to put together an index. But a lot of this is going to happen really fast in just a fairly near future. What we got here? Let's see. Oh, this, it is old, it is old. I was taken aback when I was inventorying books in here and found this one, because it just looks like one of the other books around here. But opened it up, and what was it? Well, first of all, these old books, they're just great. Maps. Enrollment of the late soldiers, their widows and orphans of the late armies of the United States, state of Indiana. This is a listing of mostly Civil War veterans. And here's the reason why. Let's see. This is the reason why it's so interesting, because I'll just give you an example. Here is the name of the person, mostly alphabetical, and then it tells what company and regiment they served in the Civil War. It tells where they currently live, or their family if they're deceased. And then it gives a list of, if injured in service, give the name of the nature of the injury and any diseases that are contracted. And here's at the fall of Vicksburg, Mississippi, let's see, he became insane. And I guess we might say, you know, PTSD. That guy. But that's probably the situation that he had. He became insane. And then it says his mind was fractured. Isn't that interesting? In other cases, it'll say lost his leg or arm, or lost an eye. And so each one of these individuals, if there's information about what injuries they suffered during the war or diseases, it's listed here. And not every veteran shows up in here, but most of them do. This is a really interesting, precious book. Now I'm going to scoot over here. There's two more books I want to show you, and then we're going to just let you browse. I was using this tonight because I'm trying to figure out who the parents of my great-grandparents were. And this is an index, and that's a pretty nice new red binder, right? But actually it's an old index. And so these are all the marriages in Crawford County, all the marriages. And it's listing alphabetically the name of one of the marriage partners, and then not alphabetical, who they married. So you can find either partner listed alphabetically here. And then it will say, for instance, 1851, B137. Well, that means that this couple was married in 1851, and you'll find those records in Volume B, page 137. Where would Volume B be? That's redundant, BB. They're here. These red books are all the marriage records. So if you have an ancestor who was married in Crawford County, you can see the original marriage license right there in those books. And for instance, that second book is B. If I go to that page, I would find that record. It's so easy to see these old records and see, wow, this is the license. Now, one last, and I get this book out because that is a book. Look at that thing. That is huge. Why would anybody in their right mind ever want to generate a book like this? You know what it is? What are the two things that are certain in life? Death and tax. Okay, this covers the taxes part. Death is covered in another place in the county records. But these are tax records by township for 1940 in Crawford County. And why would I be interested in a tax record? Well, if you find, you know your relative's name and you can find them here, it gives all sorts of information. It tells exactly where they lived, so you could actually find that. It tells the value of their property. It gives you a sense of what was life like for them. So there's lots of clues here. It's a treasure trove for all of us history detectives. And although now we're at the end of the presentation, I hope you take some time to sort of figure out your family tree, find those connections, find those people, find out what they may have been like. It's really a lot of fun. Before we close, are there any other questions?
Let me just have an observation. It would seem to me that this, the push to have these records available online is going to have to be paired with an emphasis or a lobby to keep cursive writing alive. Our niece graduated this year and could not read the note we put on her graduation card.
Oh, my goodness.
And so there's going to have to be a strong lobby to teach kids this, or they still won't be able to read them.
That's a really good point. They'd have to learn to read the cursive, because all these records are in cursive.
And that's broader than Crawford County.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Any other comments?
Thanks, John.
You're welcome.
You may have said, I know you said how old the records were here, but what's the oldest, and maybe you said, that's in here?
1818.
No, I mean the newest, I guess.
Oh, the newest? Oh, well, there's not much in the way of new records here, because the newer records are generally, most of them are confidential, although like marriage records are public domain records. But the newer records are in other places in county offices.
Most of them are over in the courthouse.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just didn't know how far the range in here.
Yeah, the health department or the courthouse.
So you're talking like the 1990s when maybe they were stored differently, or?
I don't know, Roberta, I'd say, records here are generally maybe 1940s and back. Would you say
We
that?
have some that's later than that. We got some
Yeah.
divorce records in here that goes up in the 1980 or 90s or later.
Yeah, so there's a few types. And by the way, all those bookcases over there, those are land records. So if you want to find out where your family lived at a particular time in that township, it's got all that information there. It's just, I could go on and I need to stop because there's just a whole lot of great stuff in here. But thanks for your time tonight. Come back and visit often. Research your family tree. Put the pieces together. And thirdly, if you want to get involved and help in something that's important and fun, come and join us in the volunteer efforts and the projects here too. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.